and welcome to episode 6 of the ATFA Talking Wood podcast. My guest speaker today is a big personality in the industry. He's an encyclopedia of knowledge of engineered flooring. He's the face of Scribed Flooring and he's based in southeast Queensland. Hello, Greg Ceglarski, and welcome to the ATFA Talking Wood podcast.
A few moments later.
Hey Josh, hey everybody. Thanks.
Excellent, Greg.
A few inches later.
It's fantastic to have you on board today, so thank you for giving up your time.
No problem at all. Love it.
So, a lot of people around Australia and actually the world know you, and you've done a lot of travels in your time because I've heard the stories and seen the pictures. But just if you can, for other people that don't know, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how it all started to where you are now with Scribed Flooring.
All right. I am a talker, so I'll probably waffle. Like I've got to try to keep this quick. So look, I started in the late 90s. I wanted to, escalate from being a factory worker, and I got a job, in sales, and ended up at Carpet Call in the flooring industry, and then got into the timber side of things, became the timber state manager, ended up buying a Solomon store, wanted to focus on the timber side of things, so we, really sort of run with that, sold the Solomon store, had a timber business called Timberlock Flooring, and I wanted to have a shop, but after I sold the Solomons, I didn't have a shop front for a little while, and realized that I was making just as many sales out of my van as what I was out of the store. So I went, let's just run with the van. So I used to go around to people's houses. I had a lot more flexibility. I could hang around the installers and watch what they were doing. And, got let down on a job just at Christmas time by an installer one year, and thought, well, I'm going to have to install this because I've seen them do it enough times. And we installed this job and did a just as good, if not a better job, on this 100 square meters in a penthouse down at Coolangatta. Mind you, this penthouse took 10 days to do, floating floor, but I made double the money. So that was the last job. That was the start of my installation career. So that was 2001. And I've been doing it ever since. So no one has taught me anything. Well, people have taught me things, but not like an apprentice or a trade or anything like that. People have taught me things along the way, and I've sort of seen how it's done. And we're here today. So
fantastic. So going back to that start, that first taking on that risk for that penthouse, obviously you just threw it all in and just watched and learned.
Threw it all in. Yep.
Before YouTube even.
Before YouTube. Bought a Festool vacuum and a Ryobi drop saw. And a grinder, because the floor was like the North Sea. So anyway, like I said, I'm a talker, so I don't really want to dwell on that too much. It went well. It was crazy times back then. It was crazy times, and I made all the mistakes. So I think I'm only very good, not because I've been doing it right, but because I've done it wrong for so long.
All right, so I've got you here today, obviously, with your experience and knowledge of the engineered side of things. So, Greg, let's start with site assessment, I guess. Is it really important? Probably the first question I have to go.
Vital. It's absolutely vital. That's the difference between a successful install and a massive failure. Like, there's a lot of people who will get lucky and just walk in and just lay a floor and leave. And a lot of the stories that you hear of, like, people who will do all these floors, and there's only one out of every 10 or 20 or 50 or whatever that actually fail. We don't have any that fail, and that's because we do some things. And one of the key things is site assessment. And sometimes site assessment isn't walking around inside of the house. It's walking around outside of the house, doing a lap of the property, or at least looking out the window and seeing if, the house is cut into the side of a hill.
Yeah.
Or, it's on flat ground.
The environment around it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. Key.
Great. Excellent. So obviously, how do you deal with hidden hazards that may be buried in the slab or near walls? Things like water pipes and electrical cables?
Yeah, well, look, that's something that does sort of play on my mind a lot, because the way that we do moisture tests, and I'm sure that we're going to touch on this later on, but we actually like to do in situ slab testing, which involves drilling a hole, generally 40 mil into the slab.
Yep.
And we do a lot with builders. So I'm always asking the builder, am I okay to drill 40 mil into the slab? And they all say that, all of the amenities, the electrical, the pipes, all that are under are a lot further down than that.
Yep.
So my experience tells me that, a job that we're doing for Mrs. Smith, who, isn't a builder, she doesn't know how deep the pipes are.
Correct.
It should be the same, but it is something to think about. It is something to worry about. I do know that when you're drilling, and if you do hit a conduit, you actually do, like feel it sort of drop and just stop. Like that's just something to just be careful of if you're in a customer's house. It's not a builder's job. Sorry, my phone just keeps shutting it down now. You will feel it. In the case of water, if you hit water, it's gonna go. So if you are doing Mrs. Smith's house and you're going to be doing an in situ probe to drill a hole, just make sure that you know where it is to turn the water off. Never happened to me as far as in a slab goes.
Yeah.
A wall, on the other hand, we have had, in my 20 years, we've pulled skirting off of a wall and we've had water squirt out once, and even more hysterical was once in New Farm where we pulled skirting off a wall and we heard, and then we smelled gas, and then next thing you know, this apartment was absolutely filled with natural gas, and the chippies in both cases had actually accidentally nailed into a water pipe for the first case and a gas pipe for the second time, and they'd stayed sealed until this poor sucker who's the installer, which could be you, who's come along and pulled the skirting off, and suddenly you've got a leak.
Major hazard.
Major hazard. In the case of the gas, when we rang the gas company, they said, just don't light a smoke and we'll be there in the next 4 hours, which was which was out there.
Very good advice. And so with the builders, when you've asked them, have there any of them kind of been hesitant to let you kind of drill into the slabs?
In fact, and I don't want to encourage people to just go haphazardly drilling into a slab. But it is vital that you do ask, a builder on a new place that, you want to drill these pins and, drill for the plugs on, for the probes, I mean, and just make, you're drilling into someone's slab, don't just think that you can just walk in and start drilling holes in a slab. I think it's polite to ask the question.
It's communication, isn't it, with the builder, the homeowner, explaining what you're doing as well.
Exactly. So just, for me, I'm always on edge when I'm actually drilling into a slab, and it's great with a builder because you can ask him, but obviously with a homeowner you have to take that little bit more care and just be ready to run out to the street if you have to and turn the water off. And I'm confident that's never going to happen, but
just in case.
Just in case. Yeah.
No, fair enough. Okay, moving on to my next question I've got for you today. So I know it's okay, obviously, to undercut under door jambs, but what about fire doors? It's a common question.
Yeah, that's a great question. A floor installer should never touch a fire door, unless, of course, you're licensed to do fire doors, which I've never heard of a floor installer who's licensed to do fire doors. But me, again, from the story that I told you, that I actually was a sales guy who taught myself how to install, I've made every mistake, and I've cut a fair few fire doors, and luckily I've gotten away with all of them. But there's a couple of things with fire doors. A lot of them have asbestos. That's bad to go cutting into that. That's not good for your own health or for the health of others. But the other thing is, if you go and modify a fire door and in the future there's a fire and someone dies, I'm pretty confident that you're going to be liable for, manslaughter or something, quite, full on. So I would strongly recommend, I would say, just don't touch a fire door. And the other thing, just with that, we have also developed one, with the ATFA, this one of the information sheets about fire doors and some of the things that you can run into. Because if you're working in an apartment and it's got a tile floor, and that tile floor, you organise a contractor to pull it out and you put a timber floor in, you've actually modified how the fire door works. And I would strongly recommend to jump on the ATFA website and download the fire door information sheet. Because again, you can be putting yourself into a situation where you're changing the dynamics of a fire door. So that's there's some good information there.
So, so for people out there that don't know, they're in there laying floors and they come across a fire door, who should they call to do the alterations?
No, there's plenty of companies, and if you just jump on Google and do a web search, like for us, we would go Brisbane fire doors, and see what comes up, and see if there's a company that actually deals with installing, cutting, or modifying fire doors, and you can get them out and they can do the work, and look after that fire door and make sure that it's going to comply moving forward with whatever work you're going to do.
Yeah, good point. So I guess for contractors listening, so when you're out there quoting and you come across a fire door, to have this in your quote that you've had a fire door specialist come out to quote you for cutting under it. You don't get burnt, I guess, by the homeowner at the end.
Yeah, the last thing you want to do is take a fire door off, leave the door leaning in the hallway while you're working in there, so that you can actually lay through, because the fire door is not far enough up, and it's just a nightmare. Those things weigh a ton, and you just want to put that back in, either like Josh said, you either want to get that in your quote, or just we always hand it back to the homeowner to go looking for a service that will come and look after the door, and maybe pre-cut it if you can. That way, like, everything's ready to go.
Yeah, good point. Excellent. Okay, so I read where you take a measurement over 10 boards prior to laying. Why do you do this?
Okay, so this is like this is probably our big golden rule. Again, what I touched on before with the site assessment. Now, there's we used to install floors, and 49 out of 50 of them would be great, and then there'd be one job that would go wrong, and it'd be a mystery on why it would go wrong. Again, sometimes it was to do with the site, but sometimes it was to do with the expansion of the floor. We're in Queensland, and I can tell you now, after doing it for 20 years, most floors will expand by anywhere up to 0.3 or 0.4 of a mil per board where I work. So I'm in the Brisbane region.
Yep.
An engineered floor. We now do a 10 board measurement before we start. So we'll get the apprentices to stack up 10 boards nice and tight, run a tape measure over it, and take that measurement. And what we're generally finding is most of those are 2 to 2.5, some are 3, some are even 4 mil already expanded before we start.
Wow.
But there's the odd one, say 1 out of every 50, 1 out of every 100, that hasn't expanded. And when you do further research after finding that out, you find out that it arrived that afternoon or the morning before from, say, Melbourne or Sydney, which is out of a different climate, and it hasn't expanded. And if we treat that floor the same as those other 49 or 99 floors, it's going to fail, because it's going to expand that point anywhere up to 0.3 of a mil or even 0.4 of a mil per board over something that could be stacked up as 30 or 40 boards wide in an area, and it'll blow. And then later on we scratch our heads saying, why did this floor fail? I hate this brand of product because it just can go wrong for no reason. Well, no, there was a reason, and that was because that floor in that scenario hadn't behaved the same as or we have laid it before it had behaved as far as the expansion goes. It's actually really simple maths. And there's an article in one of the ATFA magazines. I'm sure that can the members do a bit of a Google search? And
yes, it's all on the ATFA website. Yep, they've done the news media.
Yep. So I think I've named the article "The 10 Board Measurement: How We Avoid Trouble," and basically it goes on. This is my, if there was one thing that I leave this industry, is the 10 board measurement, and that's measuring 10 boards before you start and deciding what you're going to do with the floor. It's my number one golden rule.
Fantastic. And when you said you're in Brisbane, so you got the boards that you used to, and the 10 you get the measurements, but when they come out of the southern states, so obviously seeing them obviously a little less in percentage, so the size is a bit smaller. Are you climatizing those ones coming up then? Is that how you're rectifying this to make it work?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of ways you can deal with it. Like on a glued floor, you can, if you have to, like if you've got decisions on what you can do with every single floor. You can go ahead and just not care and lay it and then hope that everything goes okay, and it's not going to. Or you can decide to maybe add intermediate expansion joints, which is a method of dealing with a floor that hasn't yet expanded prior to laying. So, you could either every 5 boards or 10 boards or 3 boards, depending on how volatile that expansion might be. You could put like a business card or something larger, like a piece of whippersnipper line.
Yep.
To create like a gap across a section of board, which will over time take up in Brisbane anyway. To deal with that and lay it straight away. Or yes, as you suggested, you could just leave the floor to acclimatize and naturally grow into like what it's going to be prior to installation. But yeah, if you do nothing, if you sort of stick your head in the sand and don't do anything, you expect problems.
Yeah, good point. Excellent. So, Greg, how would you assess slab moisture before putting a floor down?
Well, in my opinion, the only true way to assess slab moisture is to do an in situ probe RH test. So, we've gone and invested the money in buying a good moisture meter that, has a probe. You drill a hole to, if it's in the ground, the slab's in the ground, you drill a hole to 40% the thickness of the slab, which is about where the average moisture will sit. You've got a lot more moisture at the bottom of the slab, very little at the top, and at about 40% of the depth of that slab is where you're going to read the correct moisture. You put a probe in there, follow the instructions on how to read the probe, whether it's to leave it 24 hours or to let the probe stabilize over a certain amount of time, and you take a correct measurement. And if you're constantly doing that, if this is your practice that you're doing, especially this, I want to talk to the newer installers as well. If you're doing these things, if you're doing the 10 board measurement, if you're doing the site assessment, if you're doing the moisture tests in slab, over a few years, you're going to start seeing patterns in your area, and you're going to start being able to recognize what to look for. You're going to see, dark areas in slabs, and you're going to see like moisture sitting on the slab. You're also going to see things like slabs that are cut into the side of a hill that are going to show, more moisture. You're also going to see, like the 10 board measurement. You're going to see patterns in the sizes of the boards and in the different products and the history of those. And all of this is data. And, I've talked about, the one who has the information, and this data is something that you will gather over a period of time in your area. So if you're working wherever it is, whether it's Coffs Harbour, Melbourne, Perth, Brisbane, Cairns, Darwin, you're going to become an expert in that area with those things, which is the moisture content of the slab, the site conditions, and like seeing things that could potentially cause a risk because there's a slab cut into the side of a hill, or whatever it is. Right. And also like your 10 board measurements, you're gonna learn that these products that are sitting around warehouses in Darwin or in Melbourne, you're going to see the same pattern of that 10 board measurement over and over and over again. And then you're going to see an anomaly, and that's the anomalies are the ones that you have to be careful of. They're the floors that fail, is the ones that are different. And over it's not going to take many years, and you're going to be that expert installer who I'm not going to say who doesn't have to do moisture tests, who doesn't have to do the 10 board measurements, but you're going to be able to assess these things much, much quicker. And you're going to be able to put all that information together and actually do a successful install.
Which comes with the experience in the end of it, doesn't it?
And there's all the different jokes, and there's all the different parables, and there's all the different stories that talk about, the old guy tapping the engine, with his little hammer and charging 10 grand. It's not the 10 grand that he's not charging for the tap. It's knowing where to tap.
And the sound tap.
We've all heard those stories. And if you're not doing those measurements as a new installer, as a young installer, or even, if you've never done it before, to start doing it now, if you don't start gathering that experience and gathering that data, you're just like flying in the dark, and you're just being lucky to sort of,
until you
not make a mistake.
Yeah. Just data logging is the main thing, obviously, gaining experience and obviously knowing your surrounds, as you said, in your area, and if you do go out of your area to do an install, it all changes. The ball
Exactly.
So you've got to go through all those steps again, don't you?
Exactly. And like, if I was to go down to Byron Bay or down to Melbourne or down to Sydney to do an install, like I wouldn't be nervous, but I would be doing all of my checks. I would be like doing all that stuff, and I wouldn't be taking anything for granted. I wouldn't be taking my knowledge from Brisbane and applying it to Melbourne. It would be a disaster.
That's right.
That was so wrong. And even worse, it would be, someone coming from Melbourne and taking their information and trying to do a floor in Darwin. It would just be
correct.
Like one of the biggest failures in Australian flooring history, I think.
That's very true. So next question, how short a board should you finish a roll of flooring off with? This is obviously, do you have a minimum length, but it's a question that comes up a lot.
Okay, next question.
Before Greg gets to this question, we just want to yet again give thanks to our podcast sponsor, Urethane Coatings.
At Urethane Coatings, we are 100% Australian owned and manufactured. Oil-based, waterborne, and solvent-based floor and concrete coatings. Our flagship products, in the monothane and water coat systems range, reveal beautiful finishes, each and every time. Urethane Coatings, really looking the goods. Urethane Coatings, for all your timber and concrete coating needs. Visit us at www.urethanecoatings.com.au for more details.
Thanks to Urethane Coatings for sponsoring the podcast series. Now back to Greg from Scribed Flooring on that question.
That's what I'm asking you. You're the...
So this question, this is a very, very interesting question. Now, if you're, so we specialize in, and where we love to live is engineered floors. So we do floors that come out of a packet. Generally, they're either 1.8 meters long or 2.2 meters long or 2.5 meters long, with the occasional nested half board or nested 3/4 board. And if you've got those nested half or 3/4 boards, you can change that last board and how long it's going to be against a wall, or how short a board you should finish a row in. If you're doing solids, you've got random boards, and that's a whole nother. That question is asked again, and there's a whole different answer to that. With me, and we'll start with a starter and we'll go all the way to the other end, and we'll end with a finisher, and that end is always going to be basically however much, like, you've got full boards, which could be 2.2, 2.2, 2.2, and then you could end up with, we've put in boards that are 10 millimeters long.
Wow.
And is that right or is that wrong? How do we change that? The only way you could change that is to dock that full board, take the tongue and groove off the end of it. You could rerouter the end of that board, I suppose, and put a new tongue and groove in it, or a slip tongue, and have a larger end board. But it's a question that if we got 10 guys, 10 installers in a room, you might have 10 different opinions,
Correct.
In an old Queenslander, they would put the whole floor in first, and they would put the wall on top. And if you walked into that house, there could be an end joint that is 10 mil away from the wall. So it really nearly is. Next question, because it's a tough one for me to answer. I will
ever go wrong. Have you ever seen them go wrong, kind of, to a certain degree?
Not really, no. Like with it, we full trowel.
Yeah.
If you were putting in something that was short because, you did start with a starter, 8 meters away down there, and you've gotten to this wall down here, and, it just happened to be that there's a tiny little piece that you have to put in so it does get under the skirting. The smart guy is going to put a little bit of PVA on the tongue and groove just to keep it all together, and then smash a wedge in there so it's tight till the glue goes off.
Yep.
And then no, I have seen it go wrong. I have had small pieces in the end which no one had a problem with. It was fine. It looked good.
Yep.
The job was great, but we ended up having a dispute with that builder. And guess what? One of the things he brought up, this floor had an ATFA inspection put on it. One of the things that the builder brought up was these little tiny boards that I started with. He said, like, these little starters that I've used.
Okay.
They weren't starters, they were enders.
The opposite.
And the product was a set length product, and there was nothing we could do with changing the finish without putting, without docking his board and actually giving him what I would consider an inferior floor by docking his board.
Correct.
Away the factory end of the board.
Yep.
So it is literally an argument that two installers could have, and they would both be right and they would both be wrong.
Yeah, good point.
So it honestly is nearly a next question. It's one that I'm not smart enough to answer.
No, it's an interesting topic, that one. But we'll move on. So, Greg, obviously, you're known for having a lot of tools. You've got gadgets. So you've got the taper gauges, the in-slab relative humidity, the laser levels, your own knocking blocks that you make yourself. So how important is it to have these right tools that suit you? And tell us a bit about your tools also.
Yeah, look, it is again, these are all my opinions. And I don't want anyone to think that what I'm saying is gospel. I can only go off of like my own experience and my own beliefs. My own beliefs is like the more tools you have, the better of an installer you are. People used to, there was one guy who used to say that, Greg's only good because he's got all Festool gear. And yeah, I love my Festool. I've got 8 or 9 Festool table saws, and I'm just about to grab another one. And I love it. I love my gadgets. I love my tools. This is the taper gauge that we talk about. So it's basically got measurements that are in millimeters. But when you want to I've had builders before going, you put a straight edge down and you go, look, this slab is, out by like 7 mil, and they go, that's not 7 mil, that's only 2 or 3 mil. And then you pull the taper gauge out in a straight edge, and then when you run the taper gauge up underneath it, and it gives you like where it actually stops. They sort of go, okay, so it is maybe 7 there, and there's no argument. So that's a cool little tool. You can buy a cheap one from I think from Bunnings, but this is quite a flash one. It's
something you should all have. You know what I mean? Your tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is just a chunk of aluminium that's cut in a wedge, which has got measurements on it.
Yep, measurements.
Now, that I think delivered was about $100, which is crazy for what it is. But for us, it is. I bought one. I've had it for 15 years. I've never had to replace it. And there's the brand there if anyone's looking. If you want to take a screenshot for the ones who are on the video, but it's a Veritas taper gauge. It's gold. It's fantastic. Some of the other things, so we've got our own tools that we manufacture as well. Yeah,
tell us about.
We've got our knocking block, which in my opinion, it is the best knocking block ever, and we do sell it now. We never were in the business to actually make a knocking block that we sold, but we would make these for our own guys. So we would chase down the best HDP, that's high density polyethylene, engineering grade polyeth, like plastic, which is quite heavy. So it's basically not just a knocking block, but it's also the hammer. I found the best handles possible. We've got these stainless little legs that wind it up out of the glue to keep it so you don't cover your block with glue. We painted those. And and we've got high tensile bolts on
And
the
to
handle.
any new contractors out there, Greg, who are listening today, just explain to them what they would use this for if they were to kind of get one.
So basically, you're going to use it to knock your boards together. So usually you get a block and a hammer, and you're hitting it like that. So one hand's on the block, the other hand's on the hammer. What this is for, it's the block and the hammer together. So you can actually put this on the floor, either with the legs wound out if you're on a glued floor, or directly on the concrete if you're on, an unglued floor or a floating floor, or you're doing the last row in a glued floor. And you keep one end touching the board, and you clack it like a director going rolling,
tapping it in.
action, and you can actually hit the board all the way along, and you're using your other hand to hold the board and engage the tongue and groove, because we all know that boards are always manufactured perfectly flat, and they sit nice and flat, and there's no problem at all. But this is for the odd board that isn't flat. It's shaped like a banana, which you never see. That never happens, of course, in Australia. And you're holding that down, and you can actually tap the board together. And it's look, I encourage everyone to just try one. Most people who have one end up buying about 4 or 5 for their team. We like to use 2, one. So you're not actually looking for the thing. But if anyone buys one and they don't like it, I'm willing to take the thing back and give you your money back.
Fantastic.
Yeah, because it's just that good. It's just a must-have. And I'm not here to sell that thing. It is just a tool that is gold. You need that. You need a good moisture meter. You need a great saw. You need to look after your tools. I've heard stories of installers turning up to jobs. This is back 20 years ago, of course, to lay a laminate floor, and they come with a bucket, and in that bucket is a jigsaw, and they put the bucket down, they get their jigsaw out, they get their piece of laminate, they stand on the laminate to do their cross cuts, and they can do their rips down the bucket, and they have to borrow an extension lead off the client because they didn't even have that, and they lay a floor, and that's just no go. That's the one end of the scale. I'm at the very other end of the scale. I will buy everything and try it out. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to get in touch with me. Lasers. It's important to have a laser to make sure your first rows are straight. So get yourself a laser. And unless you're just installing at nighttime, get a green laser, because that's the ones that you can see in the daytime. A red laser, look, if all you can afford is a red laser, do that so you can buy a green laser. But a green laser is the way to go, so you can see it in the daytime, and you get your floor straight, because there's nothing worse than trying to lay a rainbow, which only gets worse as you get across the room.
Correct. Fantastic. So plug your business. So if any of our people listening would like to purchase any of the tools, tell us what tools you actually supply with Scribed, so they know. And if they can, where would they go to maybe order or see them on a website? Have you got some details?
Yeah, you can jump on our website to get, just get in touch with us to get the stair scribe. I know that there's a few places around the country that do stock it. So just have a bit of a look around there. Ask them for a stair scribe. So Scribed Flooring. So this is a tool for doing stairs. And we'll probably talk more about this maybe another time. I don't know if we can or not. But I'm going to be doing a engineered floored course with the ATFA, and I'll be showing people how to use these. But basically, you get the angle of both your stringers and also the exact side of your step.
Yep.
And your bait. It's hard to do this. And
yeah.
For the people who are watching, by the way, for the people who are listening, I'm holding these tools up and showing it in the camera. But this gets your length and angles of both ends of the step, which you can then transfer over to your overlay floor, mark it, cut it, and it fits perfectly. There's a couple of guys out there who are selling it. Josh Marquis down at Marquis Flooring has got a lot of our tools. In fact, he turns over a whole bunch of our tools. There's a couple of guys down in Melbourne. Can
they find them on your website, these tools? Is there, or is it the suppliers directly?
Jump on our website, just get in touch with us. I'm a little bit I'm not bad at doing floors. I'm pretty crap at the website side of things. I've still got to put those two on our shop. which they'll be going on there. But we do have just get in touch with us.
And obviously, listeners, you can always get in touch with ATFA, and we can pass you direct details on to Greg as well anytime. So that's no problems at all. Excellent.
Thanks,
Next question I've got for you. You've done some incredible staircases with hidden doors and the treats flying over the edge of the stairs. Where did you learn how to do these things? They're incredible.
I don't know. Like back, I guess, in the day, probably, a few years after I started, like the one thing that was lacking was sort of any stairs that looked like real stairs. Back in the early 2000s, 2000 through to probably 2005, everything I saw in engineered floors had like some horrible trim as the step edge, and it didn't look like a staircase. And one day we just got, and this was back in the days of bamboo, we got bamboo and actually glued 2 layers together, and then got a router and made like a post form stair nosing, and then sanded it and polished it and then waxed it, and did these fancy stairs. And it kind of evolved from there, us making stair nosings and doing like stairs that look like stairs. And I guess to the point where we are now, which, oh man, I got off the phone today from a builder who wants a curved step out of engineered floor with a 20 mil nosing and a 10 by 10 millimeter shadow line. I said, I think that's impossible, but we're going to give it a go.
That's fantastic.
It drives me crazy. I tear my hair up. Rather than saying no, I go, oof, that's pushing the envelope. I'll do a mock-up for you, and generally it's out of doing these mock-ups that you might come up with an idea. But if anyone needs to know, like needs advice on how to do something crazy, definitely reach out. I'm more than happy to give you some ideas. But where we're at the moment, pushing the envelope is doing some curved stuff, which you can do out of engineered.
That's so cool. That leads good into my next question. Obviously, you work with engineered flooring. So what does it allow you to do that would be difficult or not possible to achieve with other flooring types?
When you mean other flooring types, are you talking about solid or?
Yeah.
Because really, the ATFA, like, are we mostly about engineered and solids, or?
Yes. We cover solid, obviously engineered, bamboo, laminate. We cover it all, and hybrid these days. So we've obviously branched out like everyone has. Obviously, everything started at solid, and over time things have developed and moved into different areas.
We have made stair nosings by mitering out of laminate. So that is possible.
Okay.
And I know there's a few companies now that are making laminate stair nosings, and I'm guessing SPC, and also the thicker vinyls. Like we've done some of those as well, where you don't quite cut through, and you can fold those and turn them into real stairs as well.
Okay.
As far as I think solid is the easiest. Making things out of solid is the easiest thing you can do, because it's not coated. You can either stack it, shape it and sand it and coat it, or you can I call it folding. Cairo, my boss, always comes down hard on me by when I say I fold it. It's actually not folded. It's just 2 miters, and then we put the miters at right angles. But I like to do it out of one piece of timber, so it actually, to me, looks like I've folded the piece of timber. It's not folded. It's just the same board mitered. So I've kind of appeased her by using the term origami mitered. So
I like it.
I made that up, by the way. So origami is obviously folding, and a miter is a miter. So it's an origami miter. So, but what the important part is that you use the same piece of timber, so it does look like effectively folded. You can do that out of solid, but what I find with solid is it's not as flat. So what I love about engineered is that because it's made across laminations, it's generally fairly flat. So the things that I do, which is the folding, or the origami miters, I get a better result because I can actually do some pretty long nosings, and it stays pretty true, and I can get, the 2 little miters when they come together, we call that a friend of mine named it the feathers. We can get the feathers to be pretty tight, so it looks like it's solid. I have found with a solid timber, when you try to do that, you can get a little bit of movement because, traditional timber is a little bit more gnarly, and in my hands, it's a bit harder to use. And I struggle to get that same result out of solid, where, somebody who is fantastic at working with solid will run rings around me and do a much better job. So look, that's my thing. Curves, there's different methods of doing curves. So, guys who are using solids will, cut it into pieces and then relaminate it together. We can't do that with engineered because it'll just fall apart. But what I can do is I can get a piece of engineered and I can make a template. And the way we do curves is we'll make a template and then we can put it on the router and we can actually start doing mitered curves with the router on a router table. And then we can curve out the risers and actually bend them around. And there's some things that, we're going to do some advanced schools down the track, hopefully in conjunction with ATFA, and start teaching people how to push the envelope. Which would be cool.
Excellent. Excellent. No, that's all excellent. No, so I guess this is a question I don't know if you can answer actually, because what is the most impressive floor that you've installed and why? Because I know you've done a lot. I've seen a lot of fantastic and beautiful floors. Is there one that is just stands out more than the rest to you, or is a special floor? There's a bond maybe?
No, look, there isn't, but there's a job that we're doing at the moment which is a bit out of control, and it's it may be like something that is like there's we hit these milestones where there's always a new floor that we're doing that's flash. So currently we're working on a job that the block of land was 11.3 million, and the house that they're building, they're spending $26 million on the house. So that's where I'm spending all of my time since November, and I'll probably finish by the middle of the year. And it's doing my head in. So it's going to be the most impressive floor. We're doing an 8.5 meter high wall that's got a curve in it that I don't even know if it's possible or how we're going to do it. And there's two other curves that sort of copy that. And the real sad thing about it is that it's social media blackout. So I don't know if it's ever going to be seen on social media, though. I'm going to make sure that I show enough people on my phone when it's done. But I will say this, there is a floor that it will be, for me, the most impressive floor ever. And it's sitting on a shelf in our shed, and it's going into our own place I get time to do it. And I'm looking forward to doing it. It's going to have something like, it's about 50 or 60 square meters. And I know just to create the floor is going to have about 10,000 cuts that make it. So
incredible.
Yeah. It's going to be different. I know it's never been done before, and that's the one to watch for. Yeah. But it's been sitting on my shelf for about 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah.
And it's not done yet. And it's probably going to be another, I don't know how long. We've just got to find the time to set aside to be able to just get it done. And it's going to be our apprentices that do most of the work. So it's going to be really exciting that it's not done by skilled hands like mine or Rodrigo's or Cairo's, but it's going to be done by the guys who are like first and second and third year. And it's going to be that we're going to teach them. And that's so exciting to do that. It's not something that you do yourself. It's something that you teach, and someone else does it as good, if not better than what you could.
That's right. And it's so important to pass on your skills too to the younger ones coming through the industry.
Yep.
Fantastic.
So awesome. So much fun. So
you've been so great with your time. I've got one last question for you tonight. And this is a really good one, I guess, with where the industry's at, and a lot of people will probably be interested to see your response on this one. Mm-hmm. So what's your thoughts on being competitive in the market these days?
Great question, Josh. Great question. And this is something that, I don't answer a lot of. I see a lot of stuff on social media, and I don't chime in. I don't sort of say too much. But what I see over and over and over again is guys talking about, oh, you know, I can do a sand and coat for $35 a meter, or I can do an install for $25 a meter, or I can do an install for $18 a meter, you know, of a solid floor. Or and they're all talking about how cheap they can do something. And they're really proud of the fact that they can actually get something done very, very at a very low price. And look, you know, there's a lot of people who sort of arc up about those guys and everything. And I think that we shouldn't be trying to be the cheapest. I think we should be trying to do the most for our clients. And I would love to be the guy who can charge, not rip somebody off. Like, this is really important, that I'm not actually trying to just quote a stupid figure, because anyone can say $200 and $200 a meter to install a floor.
Yeah,
I
correct.
want to be the guy who has the highest rate, that consistently gets work at that highest rate.
Yep.
And it's not because I want to be the dearest, but I want to be the one doing the most for my client. So I want to be, you know, putting down a moisture barrier. I want to be grinding their subfloor so I get good adhesion to their slab. You know, I want to moisture. Like, we moisture barrier every single slab that we do, basically. And you know, if someone goes, I don't have moisture problems, like, oh yeah, I know, but the moisture barrier actually is a primer as well. So, you know, I know the moisture barrier is going to effectively bind the top of your slab, and it's going to form a chemical bond to the adhesive. And I know that at night when I go to sleep, I know that job is never going to come up through anything that I've done. And I know that client is going to have a floor that's going to last for good. And, you know, I'm, especially being a member of ATFA, know that I've done everything that I can for that client to give them a fabulous floor, and they're going to want a timber floor in their next house, because everyone does. Not everyone, but most people will, you know, buy a house and then another house, another house. I don't want to give somebody a floor that they go, you know what, my next place I'm going to either go polished concrete or tiles, because, you know, that timber floor, it didn't do what I wanted it to do. I want for us to have timber flooring as the best floor that you could possibly choose out of. I don't want timber floors to be like the cheap thing, you know, the thing that you put in because you can't afford this or that. I want timber floors to be what people strive for. Yeah. And interestingly enough, if you look in the Brisbane news and you look at the houses that are for sale, I'm sure that every capital city's got the same sort of magazine, but the houses that are in a city that are, getting the highest prices, you look through them all, they've all got beautiful timber floors. They don't have some, tile floor or polished concrete floor. Some of them have those as a feature, but the photos that you see in those articles, they are a beautiful kitchen, a beautiful view, and a beautiful timber floor. 99 out of 100 of those houses have got that. And we shouldn't be chasing our way to be the cheapest in the industry. Us as ATFA members should be trying to do the most for our clients. We're doing them a disservice by not charging them enough. You should be making a good margin, and you should be trying to get a high price and be able to spend the time to basically give each board a kiss and a cuddle before you put it in the ground, rather than slapping it in there and having to get to the next job because you've undercut Joe Blogs down the street. I'm very passionate about that.
You couldn't say it any better. I think that's a fantastic answer to that question, Greg. And obviously the passion you got for engineered flooring comes through, and all our listeners and viewers today will definitely be able to get a good inkling of what you've been doing and where you've come from. So, mate, obviously it is getting late. I want to thank you very much for being part of the ATFA Talking Wood podcast today. You yourself, the team at Scribe and Cairo, you're wonderful supporters of the ATFA. And like I said, viewers and listeners, if you do want to get onto the tools, please contact either directly Scribe or come through to the ATFA and we can pass you on Greg's details. Or if you have any questions that you'd like to ask Greg, he's more than happy to help you out. But so, Greg from ATFA, thank you very much, mate. It's greatly appreciated today's podcast. Cheers.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening.
All right. I hope you all enjoyed today's ATFA podcast, guys. We'll have a new one coming to you very soon.
So please, for the time being, stay safe, and a final word from our sponsor today.
Urethane Coatings, for all your timber and concrete coating needs. Visit us at www.urethanecoatings.com.au for